Welcome everybody to the 2021 Jimmie Lunceford Legacy Awards. I'm here with the beautiful Queen Patricia Lee, and I'm your friend, Brother Ron, also known as R2C2A the Artivist. I decided to dress up for Halloween. Normally I dress down, but this is how I do the opposite today. And 2021 feels like 2020 was like a sucker punch, but 2021 is like Tyson Fury. How is he whooping my, you know what? That I feel like, 2021 is like Tyson Fury to me. But anyway, I want to thank y'all for spending some time with us today in the city of Good Abode. That's the official moniker from Memphis, Tennessee. And we are here to honor not only the legacy of James Melvin Lunceford, but also the legacy of you. Do y'all realize that Memphis got more songs about it recorded than any other city in America? There are more songs about Memphis than New York or Chicago or Los Angeles. Memphis is a very powerful place. Like, for example, I would say the first gangster rap song was Blue Yodel No. 9 with Louis Armstrong and his Memphis queen, Lil Hardy Armstrong, the woman who made him a superstar. They recorded this with Jimmie Rogers. They talking about Blue Yodel No. 9 was recorded back in the day, like 90-something years ago, right? He was talking about shooting craps on the corner of Bill and Main. What's on the corner of Bill and Main? They were shooting craps, and he said, I pulled out a gun and snarled around his home. So Memphis got a lot of history here. And like to paraphrase the author William Faulkner, the past is never past. So it's time for us to learn from this past that's never passed. Y'all have a rich legacy that has been denied you all. Now is the season to claim your rightful inheritance. So give yourselves a round of applause. So it's always good to have a powerful, beautiful, melanated queen stand next to you. You doing all right today?
Doing great. Let's give it up for We All Be.
Yeah, all right, powerful teacher.
Yes.
So this feels like it's still a Mercury retrograde going on. I don't know about you all, but it's like the whole year is Mercury retrograded for me. But there's a silver lining because I'm here to tell you all about James Melvin Lunceford. Y'all got a free ticket, not free for me, but I'm willing to pay for y'all lunch or y'all dinner for, food for thought.
Give it up.
Yeah.
Give it up. Thank you.
So we kind of like we improvising along. So who was James Melvin Lunceford? No, now that was an introduction from 1936. Jimmie Lunceford is unique because if you look at that band, some of them people were his high school students at Manassas High School. Like the drummer Jimmy Crawford was one of the greatest swing band drummers of all time. He started out with Mr. Lunceford at Manassas High. You look at Was A.L.L, the bass player. He started out with Jimmie Lost at Manassas High. A brother who could pass, named Willie Smith, one of the greatest alto saxophonists of his era. He started, as friends with Jimmie Lost at Fisk University. You got a very educated brother here. He got his college degree at Fisk University. He actually was born June 6, 1902, down in the Evergreen community. Now, it's say Fulton, Mississippi, but there's a community called Evergreen outside of Fulton. A lot of black folks that own a lot of land to this day down there. His parents owned like 70 acres of land when he was born. His grandparents, who was born into slavery, ended up owning over 353 acres of land. And if you go down there today, there's still black folks, his people still own the land and got their houses on. So that's a story that needs to be told. But go ahead, get up from land ownership. Black land matters, right? Black land matters. But he actually moved away when he was a baby. He was raised in Denver, Colorado. His music instructor was Was Whiteman, who was the father of Paul Whiteman, who was the so-called king of jazz, because he's a white man. He's the so-called king of jazz. But his father, Paul Whiteman also commissioned George Gershwin to do Rhapsody in Blue. So Paul Whiteman was very commercially successful back in the 20s and 30s and even decades later. But his father, Was Whiteman, thought that music education should be had by all, black and white. Everybody should have a chance at an excellent music education. Jimmie Lost was trained by this man. He was a prodigy. He could play anything he put his hands on. That's how gifted he was. And also he was a gifted athlete as well too. He actually went back down south. He went to Fisk University in Nashville back in 1922, class, I believe, of 1926. He actually fell in love with Yolanda Du Bois, who was the daughter of Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, who also was a Fisk man. You know, Dr. Du Bois is the father of American sociology, also credited with being the first so-called black person to get a PhD from Harvard University. So, you know, even though Jimmie was a Fisk man, he did not approve of the relationship. He actually arranged for a marriage to County Cullen for his daughter, who was like the poet laureate of the Harlem Renaissance. It's kind of like what the Williams sisters are, or Tiger Woods was back in his time. He was like a prodigy like that. So it was the wedding of the decade, but come to find out, County Cullen was more in love with his best man than his woman. There's Google Harold Jackman. He was known as the finest man in Harlem. I don't know if you agree or not, but just Google him. He was a teacher and also a model. So that was his best man he fell in love with. So they got divorced, but Jimmie Lost never stopped loving Yolanda. Loved her to the day he died. But he met another sister that went to Fisk University named Crystal Tully. And she actually was an English teacher at Booker T. Washington High School. And Dr. Vasco Smith was one of her students. He told me about the lovely Crystal Tully. And when she married Jimmie, he was a big Jimmie Lunceford fan. But what made it interesting about Jimmie Lunceford, he started the first high school band. He's credited with being the first high school band director. When he went to Manassas after he graduated from Fisk, he was hired to be the gym teacher and the language instructor and some other things at Manassas High School. Anything but a music teacher or band director. Manassas is credited with being the first fully accredited high school for black kids in Shelby County. So they actually went all the way from 9th to 12th. I know people talking about Cortrec, Booker T. Washington, they went from 9th to 11th, but this actually went from 9th to 12th. It was one of what you call them Rosenwald schools back in the day. So Jimmie went there. He majored in social work. He wanted to use music as a way, as a rites of passage to help young black boys and girls become adults, responsible adults. And also, he just loved music. So he wanted to share that passion with his students. And also, he believed that music could help instill community pride in that neighborhood. So he went to work, raised money among the community to help the kids get instruments. He's also credited with being the first person in the whole world to teach jazz studies in a formal educational setting. He did that. The black dude up in North Memphis did that. North, he did that. Give it up for him. So he did that, right? And also he formed this band called the Chickasaw Syncopators. But he knew about his heritage, knew about the Chickasaw, he knew about all that stuff. He was very well versed in who he was. And he stood on that. And I had a chance to talk to people who knew Mr. Lunceford, who went to school, Captain Perry Thomas' class of 32, Manassas High. Her brother graduated, and I actually went pro with Jimmie Lost, played in his high school band, turned professional. She told me by the time those guys graduated from high school, they were 30 years old. They were so mature and responsible. So black masculinity matters. Black manhood matters. Black man, you are needed at home. Yes. So Jimmie understood that, right? So he left Memphis back in 1930. 4 years later, he became the house band at the Cotton Club. Took over after Duke Ellington and Cab Calloway. And he was so popular, he was known as the most popular dance band for black people in America. His nickname was the Harlem Express, this band. And Glenn Miller, everybody wanted that sound. He had the Lunceford 2-beat sound. You think about the Memphis sound, it has its roots in the Lunceford 2-beat sound. You think about either Stax or High or even 3-6 Mafia or anything. There's a certain sound that we have that people love. And also he had a background as being a part of the historical black colleges and universities because they matter still too. This guy was very educated, got his degree at the HBCU. So they was the #1 attraction at the Apollo Theater for a whole decade. You gotta think about it. The Apollo Theater booed Lauryn Hill, Luther Vandross, Dave Chappelle, their first time up. But he was the #1. His band was the #1 attraction. And they put the show in Showtime. They're like the Showtime Lakers from the 80s. They were flashing and all that stuff. They were made for TV, but they was too ahead of his time. Jimmie Lost was one of the first bands to have tailor-made suits. His band was well-versed in choreography, in singing, and telling jokes. It was like a total package. You understand? Like, you got a lot for $1.25 back then. So sometimes people were like, by the tens of thousands would attend these dances. I mean, he had battles at the Savoy. He was known as the king of the battle of the bands. He would outclass bands like Duke Ellington and Count Basie on the regular. No less authority than Glenn Miller said that Duke is great, Count is remarkable, but Lunceford tops them both. Because everybody wanted that distinct sound. You gotta think about it. He used his students from Manassas High School and buddies from Fisk to form one of the greatest, if not the greatest swing band of all time. So what I love about Jimmie Lost, while y'all here, is that he believed in Memphis, he believed in black folks, he knew Black Lives Matter back in 1942. So when he used to come back to Memphis, he'll sell out on Bill Street Auditorium, Church Auditorium, he'll come back to Manassas High School faithfully and do free concerts and musician clinics for the kids at Manassas High. One of his proteges was the late great Emerson Abel Jr. Arguably, probably, might be one of the band director, great high school band director of all time, produced from the city. He said when he was a part of the Rhythm Bombers at Manassas, Jimmie Lost would do music clinics, and he was very impressed by the saxophonist from Kansas City named Joe Thomas, who was featured in that clip. So, Mr. Emerson Abel Jr. also helped create the Southern Heritage Classic. He created it in his own living room. So people need to know that he actually drew the first logo for the Southern Heritage Classic. Because I always want to tell that story. Because there's so much hidden history that we don't know about. And also, he kicked Isaac Hayes out the high school band in Manassas, ended up working for Isaac at Stax, and the rest is history. So, always a student, always learning, always striving, right? So also what I love about Jimmie Lunceford, he also owned and flew his own airplanes at a time when they were not trying to train black folks to fly airplanes. Right now, December 7th will mark the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor attack. The guy who planted that was Emerald Yamamoto. Guess where he learned how to fly airplanes at? In America. He also went to Harvard University. So but Jimmie Lost was a patriot, right? But in the late 30s, he took flying lessons, and by 1940s, he owned his own airplane. So this guy was a college educated, owned his own airplane. Just during the Great Depression, he brought an airplane that would cost in today's money $500,000 during the Great Depression. So he was making some money, but he loved black people. He loved to come back and serve his people. He would start music education programs throughout the country, fund them himself. Jimmie was a village guy. He knew it took a village. Not only was he looking out for the younger people or the children, but also he had a plan where he wanted to buy real estate to start a retirement community for black musicians. I say he majored in social work. He was a social scientist. So unfortunately, why don't we know about Jimmie if he's this popular and stuff like that, right? You can still hear his, they use his songs in cartoons back in the day. I got rhythm in my nursery rhyme. Just look it up. Think, oh, look, it's all online, Why is he not known like he should be? Well, he didn't live that long. He died 45 years young. What happened, allegedly, he was in Seaside, Oregon, signing autographs at a music shop before a gig at the Bungalow, which was right next door. He dropped dead. Some people believe he was poisoned because allegedly they had an incident at a local restaurant where the restaurant owner refused to serve black people. Now, y'all understand, I know y'all think, oh, Mississippi, all that, Arkansas and Tennessee. Look, Oregon probably was the first and only state to have in this Constitution. Oregon became a state back in 1859. It had in its Constitution, it's 2 years before the Civil War, it had in its Constitution that black folks could not live, work, or stay there or own property. So that's where he was at, because, Malcolm said anything south of Canada is Mississippi. So, I don't know what y'all talking about. Y'all gonna get away and go somewhere. But Jimmie stood his ground. Allegedly, he demanded to be served. His people wanted hamburgers. They gave him beef sandwiches. Arby's was not invented until 1964. So I can't trust it, right? How is Arby's still in business? I don't know. Who goes to Arby's? But anyway, he was 45 years old. In Ohio. That's definitely right. Up in Ohio. But he had 2 funerals, right? Because Jimmie, when he got successful, he loved to be around his people. He lived on Edgecombe Avenue up in Harlem, the famous Edgecombe Avenue. Everybody lived there. Then when he got more money, he moved out to White Plains, New York, where his next door neighbors were the Representative Right Reverend Adam Clayton Powell Jr. and Hazel Scott, brilliant jazz pianist and TV innovator and pioneer. And also the Nicholas brothers. He was his next door neighbor. I actually got a chance to talk to Jimmie Lunceford's nephews. That's another story. I ain't going to keep y'all too long. We got a long program. But he had a funeral down in Memphis. They brought out his inner circle. And he's buried in Elmwood Cemetery ever since July 1947. And the reason I said no, H.D. Whalen was the patriarch of the Whalen music family, Whalen family. He was close friends with Jimmie Lost. This is Kirk Williams' grandfather. He was real close friends with Jimmie Lunceford. He sung at Jimmy's funeral, and on the way home got killed in a car accident. So that's the connection to the Whalen family. You know, so Jimmie, I'm going to paraphrase Nat D. Oh, I can read it from here. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it alone after that, so y'all can get on to the program. Just want to paraphrase something right quick. Yes, I can. Well, I just gotta paraphrase it. Nat D. Williams, radio. No, this past week, WDAI just celebrated this anniversary. First black radio formatted station in the whole country. They got sister Queen Belle Johnson. We celebrating tonight. Really true voice of the people. Nat D. Williams also was a historian, was a teacher at Booker T. Washington High School. And he said it himself, to paraphrase him, let Jimmie Lunceford's burial spot be of significance to black people. Let it be some inspiration, knowing that Jimmie decided to live among his people, that he took black boys, unsophisticated black boys from North, and made them some of the greatest at their profession, one of the greatest music organizations of all time. And he said he decided to live among his people, to serve his people. Let that be a reminder that to serve is the highest calling. And I'm paraphrasing, I'm saying like we should, I noticed as a people, we don't remember those who really care about us. You know, like Ida Welsh never had to leave Memphis. If more of us stood by her, she loved black people. You know what I'm saying? The people that love us the most, we don't always love, because we don't love ourselves a lot. You know, I remember talking, I'm going to leave it alone, I'm going to go move. I remember talking to this beautiful black woman from St. Louis named Mama Colette. She was living in Harlem back in New York back in the 50s and 60s. She said she would get out the subway and see Malcolm X on the corner talking that talk. She said, this dude is a fool. Every day she'll see him talking. Then one traumatic event happened to her one day. And when she got out the subway and passed Malcolm, it all made sense. So this is the price we pay to serve our people, to love our people. We must give up sometimes the ultimate sacrifice. But let that sacrifice not be in vain. Do not let the young death of Jimmie Lost be in vain. We should still help. I'm going to say one more thing. I go to Manassas. When I do this thing, we do a whole week of activities. I go to Manassas High School to educate. Every time we go to Manassas, like they have bad luck with their music program. Like they just lost their band director of 2 years to COVID. He was just 50 years young. I mean, just 5 years older than Jimmie Lost. Like every time they're trying to make some traction, they get some setbacks. They've been having so much bad luck for a couple of decades, but it'd be a shame to have a place like Manassas not have music education going on. I mean, this guy started jazz studies at Manassas High School. You got all these great musicians that come out of Manassas. I just said Isaac Hayes, but if you look at Miles Davis' autobiography, he talks about, man, all these guys I'm getting from this one high school in Memphis. He had Frank Stroger in his band, the late great Harold Mayburn. He had George Coleman in his band. He said, what are they doing at that school? Not realizing also his autobiography, in the same autobiography, he said his music hero growing up was Jimmie Lunceford. That he used to listen to Jimmie Lunceford on the radio from East St. Louis. So I don't even know he made a connection. But anyway, thank